Hello and welcome back to KXAN Plus. I'm your host, Esmeralda Zamora, and we have our Nick's First Warning Weather episode with Chief Meteorologist Nick Bannin. And this time we have another special guest. We have meteorologist Tommy House.
Oh, yeah, it's a full house here today.
How are y'all?
We're good. How are you?
We're good. I'm doing
I
good
can't speak
too.
for Tommy, actually. I shouldn't say we're good, like we're some,
A team.
conjoined mind or something. But I am well. Tommy, how are you?
We're doing good. Weather minds think alike.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, there's been a lot of chatter in this room before starting the stream about a certain topic, and I want you all to introduce it for me.
Yeah, so I know Tommy and we dig deep in the weather social media scape, and it could be a dark place. There are a lot of people in search of clicks, revenue, worst case scenario posts,
Clickbait.
and it's a tough task to tackle because a lot of people click on that stuff and share that stuff, and then it sort of snowballs out of control. And then somewhat the more conservative forecasting message can sometimes get lost. So what we thought we would do today is dive into something called sudden stratospheric warming that is potentially already ongoing in parts of the Arctic, and dive into what it can do and what it can't do and what we do know and what we don't know, rather than a sort of scare message regarding what's happening here. So that's what we're going to do, and that's what we're going to tackle and dive into, right, Tommy?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, this is one of the things where a lot of people are traveling for Thanksgiving. In fact, AAA has the most amount of travelers. So people are looking ahead to Thanksgiving and beyond. And when you go on Facebook and you see credited sources saying huge cold air outbreak, huge winter storms already, it just makes that 7-day forecast we work on less valuable, because you could just access information by looking at fear-mongered posts. So Nick, great point there, especially with these big holidays coming up.
Yeah, so I thought we would start by talking about what sudden stratospheric warming is and what it can do, and sort of how we can get cold air to come down to central Texas should the situation be perfect.
Is there already chatter that this Arctic air is making its way south?
Yeah, I mean, there are some indications of colder air coming into the northern tier of states later this month. And there's computer models that back that up. But will it be to the degree that so much of the chatter is scaring you to think it would be? We think it's too early to tell. And it may not be until later in December that we truly get a grasp of just how much of that Arctic cold could come in. And Tommy, sudden stratospheric warming, you think, warming in the stratosphere over the Arctic, that's got to mean warmer air. But what it does is it can break up and slow down the polar vortex and allow for some of that cold to actually spill south. So weirdly, warming in the stratosphere there over the Arctic can actually mean cold breaks away from the polar vortex and comes south. And of course, the polar vortex, the stronger it is, the more locked up that cold is over the Arctic. But almost counterintuitively, when it gets weaker, that's when we start to see some of that colder air spilling south.
That's right, absolutely. That cold air has to go somewhere. And when you have a really strong jet stream, it stays where it should. You get a bit of a wobble. Imagine you're holding a glass, right? And all of a sudden, get a little bit shaky. Could see some spilling, and occasionally, climatologically, we get some cold air during the winter months, and that's where the spilling can come from that weaker jet stream. But as you mentioned, Nick, it starts, at least in the situation we're talking about, from some sudden stratospheric warming.
Yeah, so this is what could happen, is that cold air breaks away from its typical home over the Arctic and then plunges southward. But it doesn't necessarily mean that colder air comes to where you live, or that it reaches all the way south here into central Texas. Each event of sudden stratospheric warming is unique and different. And I hesitate to use the term rare for sudden stratospheric warming because it happens about once a year, perhaps every other year, although some winters it happens a couple of times. But what I did notice is that the Climate Prediction Center, as they were doing some of their extended outlooks, they did say that it was fairly rare that it happens in November. So the fact that we're seeing it now is early and rare, but the sudden stratospheric warming events on themselves aren't actually rare, but when they happen in wintertime.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we enter now December into January, we will see more dips of the jet stream. And for our friends up north, we're talking like the Midwest, the Northeast. This could mean some wintry weather. And as you pointed out, we're so far south. We have the influence of the Gulf moisture. We have the influence of the Pacific. It's just really difficult to get that cold air outbreak. We had a front a few weeks ago, brought some 30s and 20s to the Panhandle. And we're sitting in the 40s in the downtown area.
Yeah, and even Austin's Camp Mabry has yet to have 30s for nights. They should have had that by now.
Yeah.
We haven't had highs in the 50s yet in Austin at Camp Mabry, and we should have had that by now.
Yeah.
So we're really overdue for some early preview of wintry weather. And while we may cool down more than we have so far this season at the end of this November, sort of just after Thanksgiving, it's not going to be brutal Arctic cold like you may see on some of the maps. Now, we talked about sudden stratospheric warming could have an impact on the polar vortex. But there's another way that we can get some of that very chilly air to get drawn down deeper into the United States, and that's something known as the Arctic oscillation, which is a way that we can measure how wavy or straight the polar jet is to our north. If it's pretty straight and zonal, as we call it, you don't get a lot of cold air dropping south or warm air getting pushed to the north, and that's when it's considered in a positive phase. But if it starts to transition to more of a negative phase, it's a much more wavy jet, and that allows for some areas to see their warmth really jump out with that jet. But then also it could allow some spilling of that Arctic cold to come farther south. And sometimes if you get the Arctic oscillation to be negative at the same time as you've got sudden stratospheric warming, they can both work together to make it even colder, or they can counteract each other sometimes.
Into the weather here, a few weeks out when you can tell that we have a negative Arctic oscillation in that sudden stratospheric warming, there are going to be some cold air spilling. So as meteorologists, we can see some of that data now 2 to 3 weeks out. Do we know exactly where that cold air is going to spill? No. So that's why we will possibly and probably see some big dips in the jet stream late November into early December, but we can't definitively say this will impact Texas, or we can't even really put it into a particular part of the country.
Yeah, and that's sort of the frustration, because you can see some of these patterns coming, but they once they begin like this, there's somewhat of a delayed reaction as to when that colder air actually drops down into the continental U.S. So you can see it coming a few weeks ahead of time and be like, ooh, what we got here? But you just don't know that early what those impacts are going to be. And that's why when you see various shares of almost worst case cold scenario models, sure, that's a possibility that could happen. And sometimes those sorts of shares do end up being correct, but more often than not, it's not quite as dire as that. And certainly weeks ahead of time, we don't know the degree of that cold. Esme?
So you all are saying that it's pretty hard to predict if this is going to be extremely cold or it's just going to be a bit of a chill, and how far out from there. How much time do you need to be able to properly predict something like this is going to happen?
Well, there's a reason we do a 7-day forecast, because much beyond that and the forecast accuracy goes down. Now, you can get some trends beyond a 7-day, cooler or warmer, drier or wetter. But beyond that, the specifics can be tough to come by. Like, how much cooler than normal? Is it just a degree cooler than normal? Do we finally see highs in the 50s? That's not exactly end of the world Arctic air in central Texas if that happens, but it could still be cooler than normal technically. So we can pick up on some of those signals beyond the 7-day, but we can see more of these patterns start to set up, which gives us a little bit of a preview of something Arctic maybe dropping into the U.S., but we don't know where, and we don't know to the degree of that cold. Tommy?
Yeah, well said. A lot of these big low pressure systems that computer models will output, they're not even close to the continental United States. And once they get a little closer to home, we start sending up some balloons, getting a vertical profile of the atmosphere and understanding and dissecting the storm itself. So like you said, we can look for those trends with precip, but the definitive, will it snow, will it rain, too far out to tell.
Yeah. So what we can take you into is the next 7 days, and then we'll go a little beyond that. And of course, as we're recording this today here on November the 19th, we're 8 days away from Thanksgiving now, and you could see there is a cooling trend This is unrelated, though, to some of those other discussions that we've brought up about the negative Arctic oscillation or the sudden stratospheric warming. Should we see any impacts from those things, that wouldn't be until most likely December. But we've got other weather and weather patterns and cold fronts and things that can still knock our temperatures down before any potential impact, if there is any, from those other factors. So our daytime highs gradually dropping down through the 70s. Our nighttime lows still staying above normal. Now, normal for this time of year should be in the 40s. And we have been far from that most of the time in Austin with no 30s yet at Camp Mabry. So even the next 7 days of our nighttime lows don't get all that chilly. And then we can take you through the national map here. And of course, the blue is the cold. We start to see that spilling farther south by next Wednesday. So this is the day before Thanksgiving. But still, look where we are. Mid 60s next Wednesday. That's not terrible. We may even see some 70s at that point. 60s still on Black Friday, even though that cold does start to spill through more of the country. Again, it goes back to the, will that cold make it this far south? And, it's just too early to say, Tommy.
Yeah, and one of the things too is, as you notice as you play this out beyond 7 days, the consistency of where we think that cold air is going to spill. Like, even the computer model doesn't have a great idea. It's not as definitive. If we look at the trends, right? So if we want to talk about the Climate Prediction Center's trend for some colder air coming in, we can look at this map real quick here. The lighter blue, that is the confidence we could see colder than normal, but notice there are shadings to that. So the darker blue, the higher confidence of colder than normal air. And even then, as you showed those same dates, Nick, with those temperatures, it's not like there's a widespread confidence that the Texas area is going to be getting some cooler than normal temps.
Yeah, in fact, even during that late November, early December period, the Climate Prediction Center, more than anything else, is leaning toward near normal for us, which is cooler, sure, but it's not outrageously cold. In fact, we get some emails from time to time from viewers who have heard things about what's going to happen in a couple of weeks or next month and asking us if it's true or not. And one of those things was about how cold it's going to be at the end of November. And I think my response was, yeah, we're seeing some signs of a chill by the end of the month, but I don't think it's going to be disastrous. I just think it's going to be maybe bringing us down closer to normal, if not slightly below normal for the first time that we've had in much of the month. So some signs of that. Now, as we widen this map out, Esme, maybe we can pop that back up. You can see that cold air and the higher confidence, as Tommy put it, which is very good. Those darker blues indicates much more likely to be cold. And that's what we're seeing in the vast majority of the northern states as we wrap up November and head into early December. So it's much more likely that they are experiencing the type of cold that we've been previewing. It's just whether it gets down here, still big question marks. And that's why, from a temperature outlook perspective, things leaning normal late November into early December. Not that we have normal a whole lot around here.
We don't.
But near normal is almost cool for us, given how warm the last couple of months have been. But that's where the outlook, therefore, takes us as we wrap up the month into early December.
Well, Nick, we have a lot of Facebook comments asking when this cold Arctic air is going to hit us. Is it going to be later in the winter, earlier in the winter, and who is it going to impact? Can you answer their question?
Yeah, so I'll first say that some of our longer-term computer models are suggesting that
Guys,
we
listen.
may only have highs in the 50s or 60s by the end of November. But
Not too bad.
That's beyond our 7-day, remember. But this would be sort of Thanksgiving, if not just after Thanksgiving, that we would get a little brief chill.
Yeah.
And even some of those, and Tommy and I look at a lot of the same stuff, even some of the coldest models for late November only have us dip into the 50s for maybe a day or two. If we get that cold at all. Some of them have been trending a little bit warmer today. So that's not Arctic cold by many definitions here. And then we start to climb back up again. Now, if that sudden stratospheric warming does become more of a reality this far south, as we mentioned earlier, the impacts can be somewhat delayed from when it begins to when the cold can plunge south. But for that, we would be looking for sort of first to second week of December if it makes it this far south. And that's what I want a lot of our viewers now to remember. that the things that we're saying, we're having to speak loosely
Yeah.
because we don't have scientific accuracy, nobody, that far in the future. So you just have to be very wary about some of the stuff that you see and share, because if someone's saying it, even if they're saying just a computer model, but I thought I would share it, and then everyone shares it, and then they don't read the caption, then it becomes, oh, what happened to that cold coming in?
Why is
X,
it
Y,
not
and
cold?
Z? Why is it
Yeah.
not here? And then it was like, well, we never said it would be here, that sort of thing. So just have to be careful about some of the stuff you share and see on social media. But we thought it would be a good opportunity for us to dive into some of these mechanisms that could bring that cold either into central Texas, or that bring that cold at least into the continental U.S., but also give an explanation as to why we haven't talked about it as much, because the degree of confidence in that sort of thing is on the low end. Esme, though, you ready for this?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Here we go.
Next week, we'll be able to, I think, share the December outlook.
Ooh.
So stay tuned for next week's episode
Next
of
week.
Nick's
And
First
maybe
Warning,
we'll
because we'll
talk
be
a
able to
little
dive
more.
into that a little bit more.
Yeah, about the cold and how cold it's going to get, and whether this Arctic air is going to come to us or not.
Yes, and that's the key. It's whether or not.
Yeah.
Here
As
we
it is
go.
far from certainty.
For me, it's are the pigs coming or not?
Yes. Yeah, for frequent watchers of this program, Tommy, you may not be aware.
I'm just shaking my head.
Yeah, Esme has a collection of pigs.
Oh, they're not mine.
But they live near her neighborhood, and when the temperatures get cold, they come out, right?
So I'm sure this Arctic blast is going to bring them
Okay.
out.
So instead of the phrase "when pigs fly," we'll just say "when the pigs come out in the cold," and then we'll know what
And
Esme
then
is
we'll
talking
know.
about. But on KXAN.com, under the weather and traffic tab, we've got a little in-depth explanation about all of this. Here's how Arctic air could reach central Texas. And it dives into all of that, including a recap of our discussion here today. So much to dive into. And since we've talked about this sort of current outlook, of course, remember, we're watching out for the potential for some pretty rough weather over the next, say, 36 hours, including some flash flooding potential and even a low severe weather risk. So stay with us through today, tonight, tomorrow night, even early Friday morning. Have some interesting weather around.
Yeah, we're recording this on November 19th. So if you're watching this later, just be aware that this was recorded November 19th. Nick, can you tell us a little bit about Friendsgiving before we wrap things
Oh, yes,
up?
quickly. Friendsgiving. We're raising money for the Central Texas Food Bank, and we only have a week left of our Friendsgiving challenge. It ends next Wednesday at 4 p.m. We'll announce the winner.
Who's winning so far?
So far, evening team is winning, but the morning team has won 4 out of the last 5 years, and they have a history of making a late comeback. So we're not resting on our laurels in any sort of way. We're trying to reach $75,000 raised just on the evening team alone by middle of next week. And we would love it if you could help us out. Go to KXAN.com/Friendsgiving and then click on the evening team and make your donation. It all goes to the Central Texas Food Bank in the end. And they've had a particularly tough season, what with the government shutdown and things. Last Saturday, they told me it was their busiest single day ever as far as the amount of food that they've had to give out in one day. Wow. So they really need our help. KXAN.com/Friendsgiving. Donate to the evening team. You'll feel really good about it. And the food bank really needs our help.
Yes, they do. Well, thank you both for joining me here for Nick's First Warning, and we will see you next week, Nick, and I'll see you on Sunday, Tommy.
Thanks for joining me,
I'm actually
Tommy.
gonna
Tommy's going to be off on Sunday.
Oh.
I'm going to be in Boston, but hey, listen, it'll be fun.
Stay warm.
Thanks for having us, Esme.
Bye.